Díghíomh chuna sa taisibh. I'm Owen, and I'm going to do a lesson walkthrough of easily confused words, showing you the importance of the síneadh fada, that's the accent mark in the Irish language. It's part of Work and Weather, you mightn't guess it, our Bitesize Cúrsaí course for members. And what I'm going to do is go through some of the lesson, kind of the first half, and then if you've access to the lesson, you can take the rest of it yourself, do a bit of practice. So what is the accent mark? Let's get started first. So I know I'll be scrolling a bit through, but you can at least follow my mouse pointer to see where I'm talking about. So the fada, we call it the síneadh fada, the long accent mark, or you'll often just hear people calling it the fada. Like when I was in school, Irish language school, we often just said the fada. You put the fada on vowels. So you get the fada on vowels like A. And what it does is it signifies a long sound. Fada means long. And síneadh fada, the more full name for this accent mark, that little line over the vowel, is a long stretch. And what's lovely about it is, in Irish, when you see a síneadh fada, when you see that fada accent mark, that sound kind of dominates the sound in the word. So what it means is that sound is always long. Like for a fada, it makes a ah sound, ah. And it always makes that sound. So you don't have to be guessing how that vowel should be pronounced at a certain time. So for me, when you're learning the pronunciation of the Irish language, the fada is the first thing to concentrate on because it's always like a source of truth. And then you can start picking up other patterns of pronunciation. And we're going to show you a little bit in this lesson why the síneadh fada is so important. I guess when you're writing it down as well, like don't miss it out, because if you miss out the fada, it can change the meaning of the word. Now, some of these examples maybe are a bit contrived, you could argue, but at least it shows you that there are words where the fada really matters. And when you're writing it down, you always have to write it down. Don't leave it out if the word has the fada. Let's get going. So this word ought means place. Ought. Ought. It's like a soft T at the end. Ought. Slender T. Ought. And the A fada, we know that it's a long accent mark. What we're going to do is go through some examples of the accent mark in words. Then we'll see examples of words and vowels without the accent mark. And you'll see that they're so much shorter and more subtle. So you'll really hear the difference. We'll keep going through the example. A. A means it. And so when you get E fada, that's how you pronounce it. A. And it's a word, A, it means it. E fada in a word, éire, éire. That means Ireland, éire. So you're really leaning into the word, éire. E is a word, I fada, that's how we pronounce the I fada, E. It's a long E, and it means her. And in a word, sheen, like síneadh fada, so you're seeing the same root as the síneadh fada. Sheen means stretch. Sheen. So you have to really lean into the word and say I fada, E, sheen. Then O fada, O. And this word, the letter on its own, O fada, is a word on its own. It means from. And an example of O fada in word is show, which that's just an imported word like English, show. Then U fada, oo, makes oo sound. So the word teach in Irish, we say mooin, mooin. So it's oo, like double O in English. So you really have to lean into that again. Now, some more subtler examples. These are maybe a little harder to hear. Ah. Ah. It's not ah, but it's ah. There's no fada on the ah. And this is a word on its own too. It's like it's a possession word. It's like his, her, their, and then a without a fada in a word, at. So it's not ought, it's at, and it means strange or peculiar. So are you starting to see the importance of the fada when it's written down in a word? It really tells you whether to lean into that vowel sound or whether it's a really soft, usually soft sound. You don't have to have the fada to have a long vowel sound in Irish, and our course for members, Crack Irish Pronunciation, goes into some of those patterns. I'm not going to cover that today. But by default, if the fada is not there, you can assume that it's a nice, soft vowel sound. Again, a vowel is when your mouth is open. It's like a, I, e. Those vowel sounds, not consonants. E on its own without the fada is, don't think it's a word, But to pronounce it, for example, in a word, era is a burden. Era. That's not a word I use a lot. Era. And that's in contrast to era, which is Ireland. So it's only missing the fada, right? And it's a different word. I on its own, nice and soft, I, and it means in or into. And I in a word without the fada, for another example, is shin. And that means that, shin, as opposed to sheen that we saw earlier. O on its own is not a word, but you'd pronounce it like UH phonetically in English, And an example of it is sh, means this, sh. So shin, that, agus sh is this. U on its own isn't a word either, but you pronounce it It's like UH. You could phonetically spell it very like the O on its own as well without the fada. And an example is mwin, which is part of the back. So we have a phrase in Irish, mwin na mwicca, on the pig's back. And it's when you're doing very well, you're on the pig's back. So I'm not going to go further into this lesson. It's about halfway through. And there's more examples with contrasting words with and without a fada. And there may be longer sentences. So those are good examples to click on the button, listen to the recording, and do it in your own time and come back to it and hear the subtle differences. And if you don't hear the subtle differences, it's not your fault. It's what your ear is trained to hear. And don't beat yourself up for not hearing the differences of the sounds. It's a matter of exposing yourself to those sounds, listening to the Irish language every day, Gaeilge, Gachla, and over time you get to hear those differences that your brain has not trained for hearing. I've watched a TED Talk that babies as young as 6 months old, their neural networks in their brains are adapting to the sounds of the mother tongue that they're hearing. So the brain is born open, fresh, clear, and then it starts specializing to hear the sounds in its native language. And that means when you hear other languages, it's much harder for you to hear subtle differences in sounds that native speakers will hear no problem. That's not your fault. That's how your brain is structured. So it's a process of connecting those neurons by hearing the differences over time. Gaeilge, Gachla, Irish every day. So thanks a lot for going through this. If you're not a member of Bitesize Irish, you're welcome to try, and you'll have access to this lesson and all our online lessons in Bitesize Cúrsaí. Hope you enjoyed it. Slán.